All right, welcome back. We are on Observation 2. I'm Cynthia Monpoint, and I'm going through the Massachusetts Marijuana Social Equity Report that I put together to analyze the equity programs here in Massachusetts through the lens of those harmed the most by the war on drugs and marijuana mass incarceration. Observation 2, the CCC engaged in a series of decisions that amount to true accommodations, but exclusively for medical marijuana dispensary operators. Recommendation 2, establish a business incubator program that requires every existing and new dispensary or general applicant to incubate an EE or SE business. Develop the parameters of this program alongside with the participants in this program to ensure success, accommodating for potential obstacles or pitfalls. And lastly, prioritize the interest of the public and ensure that the decisions made and policies put forth do not reflect regulatory capture. And so the evidence that I share for why this is the observation that is made that the CCC's decisions and accommodations are really for the medical dispensaries or the RMDs stem back to 2018 when the CCC decided to uphold the same priority status for the RMDs that was given to economic empowerment certificate holders. This allowed for the RMDs to hold priority status and have their applications reviewed at the same rate as any economic empowerment certificate holder submitting their application. Now the problem is that EEs, the economic empowerment certificate holder, refer to them as EEs, the EEs also had a requirement for staffing, that 75% of their staff come from the communities of disproportionate impact that the CCC had identified. In addition, that 51% of their contracts come from individuals who have a quarry, who have some form of drug-related quarry or record, but are otherwise able to participate in the cannabis industry. So here are additional requirements that are being placed on EEs in order for them to have the priority status, and that requirement was not extended to RMDs. They're not beholden to that same high standard of impacting the community and standard of the level and type of staffing and contracts that they should have. In fact, the RMDs were granted additional accommodations. The window for application to this priority status period, if you will, ended on April 18th. And so anyone who applied for an economic empowerment certificate after that time frame was automatically rejected because they did not meet the time limit, the deadline, as opposed to RMDs who at the time there were approximately 80 RMDs that would have qualified for that application or had an application in or RMD operational, so they qualified for the priority status, yet the CCC did not enforce that. There were applications that were submitted after April 18th up until October of 2019 that allowed the RMDs to obtain priority status. Even further, in terms of the accommodations for RMDs, is the fact that the CCC did not limit where RMDs can expand their location. And so they could have limited it to the municipality for where the existing RMD was operating or licensed to operate. However, they were provided free rein, which allowed the RMDs to go around and with them having the capital and the network already established, which was necessary for them to have their dispensaries operational or even to get to the final licensing phase. It allowed them the opportunity to go around the state and pick up property and establish relationships and position themselves for host community agreements that otherwise could have gone to EEs who were left scrambling after this head start, if you will, was given to RMDs. since the RMDs did not have any other requirements, there was a missed opportunity there. And I say missed because the CCC, the commission, they were well aware of a social equity model out in Oakland, California, that basically stated if a dispensary wanted to open up, they had to incubate one of their social equity participants. And so Massachusetts, we had the opportunity to formulate our own version of that, and we still do, hence the recommendation to formulate our own version of that. But had that been the case, had the decision makers had that sensitivity to the needs to ensure equitable participation, then the requirement would have been for RMDs, as they expanded, for them to incubate a social equity or an economic empowerment applicant. At the time, the state had not identified social equity participants yet, but we now have them. We have a total of about 270 with several duplicates. I myself am a duplicate, meaning I hold both an economic empowerment certificate and I also hold social equity participant status. And so there was a missed opportunity where we would have had 100 plus RMDs rushing to open up their facilities, their establishments, but they would have been required to incubate an economic empowerment certificate holder, or after the social equity participants were identified, one of those participants in that first cohort, to incubate them so that they too can open up an establishment. And so fast forward here as we enter into the middle half of 2020, we would have been looking at 100 plus RMDs with final licensure or operational, and we'd also be looking at 100 EEs or SEs, really providing the groundwork and the framework for a truly diverse and robust industry here, in the foundation for that here in Massachusetts. But that has not been the case. And so the recommendation is to put that mandate forward now, to require that every existing RMD and any RMD that seeks to pursue licensure identify at least one equity applicant, whether it be an EE certificate holder or a social equity participant. Identify one that they incubate, and the parameters and the terms and what incubation looks like is something that the CCC needs to engage the participants in this program, particularly the EEs and the SEs who would be interested in partnering and being incubated, engage them to define what the terms of that incubation will look like to ensure success. What are some of the key things that need to be in place, time frame wise, monetary wise, technical assistance wise? What are some of the supports that need to be in place to ensure that we have a successful program? And the conversation will be much different, because now we've established a foundation fostering RMDs working with EEs and SEs and not pitting them against them through the types of accommodations that have been given to RMDs and denied EEs, or in effect creating barriers for EEs, completely going against the charge that was set forth for the CCC in terms of their requirement to ensure a full and robust participation by everyone, and ensuring that economic empowerment participants and social equity participants are able to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities and become licensed owners here in Massachusetts. The last point that or the last piece of evidence that really highlights how it is that accommodations are made for the RMDs is on March 23rd, 2020, the Governor Baker issued an emergency order due to COVID-19, effectively closing all adult use facilities immediately. The CCC boldly amended that order on April 7th, 2020 to allow for adult use cultivation and manufacturers to remain open to support the medical dispensaries and to support the demand from the surge of new patients that had emerged. Now, that in and of itself, the accommodation there is the fact that the CCC demonstrated for everyone their regulatory capacity and the level of latitude that they have when it comes to creating policy that will meet the needs of the industry. Here it is, the governor said all adult use is shut down, and the CCC identified ways to ensure that the cultivators and the manufacturers were still able to operate by coupling them with the marijuana industry. So still staying within the parameters of the emergency order that was placed by the governor, but finding the creative and bold thinking as to how do we meet that order but still ensure that our businesses are still able to operate. And they advocated boldly and aggressively for the retailers to open as well. Now they weren't successful in that measure. However, the point of the matter is we have not seen this level of creativity, boldness, and aggressive action when it comes to ensuring that economic empowerment certificate holders and social equity participants are able to obtain licenses here in Massachusetts. When we look at the numbers as to how many RMDs, general applicants, etc., have been licensed, we're looking at close to 200, and we're looking at barely 10 EEs or SEs who hold a license, whether it be a provisional or a final license, and only one EE is operational at this time. And so it's a dire situation that requires a bold, aggressive, and swift, immediate action. The recommendation here to do the incubation is an immediate action that would result in immediate number change, because we would require that the existing dispensaries, in order for them to continue to operate, that they incubate. And there are many EEs who are in queue, who are working diligently to put together the pieces that they need to open up their own establishment, and having that level of support from established and more equipped establishments or the RMDs would position them to do so more effectively. We'd see a change in the numbers drastically, and so long as the CCC upheld their end in terms of prioritizing the review of the applications from EEs and SEs, we would see a change in who is licensed, who are the owners here operating in Massachusetts. And so for now, that is the commentary that I have for Observation2 when it comes to the accommodations that are being made for RMDs, but not for EEs and SEs. In Observation 3 and 4, I go into a little bit more about that observation. But because this content is dense, because it is a lot to digest, I am going to stop the clip here, and I will restart another video.